Hello church, welcome to today's devotional. Today we're actually going to look at the very first time that Jesus appeared to one of his followers, and it's really significant. We're reading in John's Gospel today, chapter 20, so at some point today or this evening, why don't you read those verses for yourself and meditate on them. I know God will encourage you through it. The context is that Mary Magdalene had gone to the tomb. She saw it was empty, and she told the disciples, and of course Peter and John made their way to the tomb. John got there first. He outran Peter, but when Peter arrived, he went straight in. Typical Peter. And they saw that the grave clothes had been set aside and the body was gone. They then left the area to tell the other disciples that Jesus wasn't there. But Mary stayed at the tomb. And because she stayed in the last place that she saw him, she met him again. There's a lesson in that for us too. But let's read those verses there in John 20 and verse 10. Then the disciples went back to their homes, but Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They've taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they've put him." At this she turned round and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not recognize that it was Jesus. "Woman," he said, "why are you crying? Who is it that you're looking for?" Thinking that he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you have put him and I'll get him." Jesus turned to her. "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet returned to the Father. Go instead to my brothers. Tell them I'm returning to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news and said, "I've seen the Lord." She told them that he'd said these things to her. What an amazing story. I love that Jesus chose to first appear to Mary Magdalene. You know, it's significant that he chose her. You see, Mary, for a start, of course, was a woman. And culturally at that time, that was not appropriate. But he chose someone who others wouldn't have valued. He chose Mary. Mary just wasn't an ordinary person in that sense. She was actually a sinful person. Her background, very dodgy. She'd had 7 demons, we're told, in Mark's Gospel in her, and Jesus cast them out. But she'd had a radical encounter with Jesus and was a follower of him for those maybe 4 years. Mary remains at the tomb. She's upset. She doesn't understand what's going on. Things have not turned out the way that she would have expected. And this Jesus that has turned her life right around is suddenly gone. She sees 3 things. And this Easter, I want to encourage you that you also can see 3 things. But not all of them will give you joy. The first thing that Jesus saw was a miracle. The first thing that Mary saw was a miracle. Jesus was alive. Well, she hadn't seen Jesus yet. She saw the empty tomb and she knew something had happened. The stone was rolled away. The grave clothes had been set aside. It was a miracle beyond doubt. She saw a miracle. For many people today, they will view Easter and they will see a miracle. They will say something amazing happened there. We can't quite work it out. We can't put science into it, and there's no logical explanation. So it's something. It's a miracle. It's inexplainable. Lots of people will acknowledge that there was an event. But for Mary and for many of us, it isn't enough. You see, the disciples had witnessed this miracle and ran away. Mary stood and waited. She cried at the tomb. Then she looked a bit closer. She didn't just see the tombs, didn't just see the miracles, she saw the messengers. She looked in and there were two angels, one at the head and one at the feet where Jesus' body would have laid. They spoke to her. And these were supernatural beings, of course. Angels, messengers of God. And they brought a message. And the message was, he's not here. He's risen. What a message. It's there for us to believe. It's there for us to witness. But the message itself doesn't save us. It isn't enough. You could see the miracle. You could acknowledge that something happened. You could see the messenger. You could hear the gospel. You could watch the podcast. You listen to the podcast. You could watch the online service. You could read your scriptures. You can do all that and still miss the whole point of it all. You see, Mary waited then, having seen a miracle, having seen a messenger, and then in the quietness of that garden, heard a voice calling her name, Mary. Immediately she heard Jesus call her name. She knew it was him. You see, what she needed was the Master. She needed an encounter with him personally. There are many who sadly will acknowledge a miracle, they will listen to the messengers, but they will never see the Master. I want to encourage you, as a Christian, make sure that you spend time listening in the quiet for his voice. He wants to call you by name. He wants to draw close to you, and he wants you to remember that you're his. He will appear to you because you're precious to him. He'll appear to you because you matter to him. He'll appear to you in the same place that you saw him last, maybe in unexpected ways. This Mary thought that Jesus was a gardener, saw just a very ordinary sight, a man in a garden, and yet Jesus sometimes appears to us that way too. So today I pray that you'd see him in the ordinary, as you're washing the dishes, as you're going for a walk, as you're reading a book, as you're even watching a movie, as you're going around your normal daily routine. Pause and listen for the Master. He's more than a miracle, more than a messenger. He's your Master, and he wants to call you personally by name today. So I pray that God would really draw close to you today and encourage you. Amen.